The transition begins for the governor-elect and some interesting bills filed at the state legislature. It's Grant Herms. It's Aaron Brillbeck. It's Mitchell Talks, the News 9 sessions now. I would say hello to Mr. Brillbeck, but I don't want him to use any mileage of his voice that we don't have to have. Good morning, Mr. Herms.
Good morning.
Remember the Brady Bunch episode where Peter Brady was reaching puberty when it's time for change, it's time for change? That's me. I'm Peter Brady reaching puberty.
When it's time to change, then it's time to change. Don't fight the tide, come along for the ride, don't you see?
Was Don Drysdale or Joe Namath in that episode? I can't remember.
I don't remember
Herms
either.
is like, who the hell is Joe?
I don't remember either.
Herms is saying, who's Brady's?
The transition.
I saw a rerun once.
Did you?
On the Brady Bunch?
Yeah.
You could be a Brady. Couldn't he be a Brady?
You could be a Brady.
I look a little like him. I
Looks
do.
like a Brady.
You look like Bobby.
My hair's long, it's curly.
Look like Bobby. Yeah.
Granty. That would be awful. Hey, listen, it's good to be back with you guys. A lot of news. We got the legislature, legislative aspects are starting, and the transition team is underway. Who wants to lead off with what? Want to start with transition team?
Sure. What we've seen here, as he's been building the transition team, the governor-elect, lots of insiders on this outsiders transition team, including some of his cabinet announcements, which we kind of knew was going to have to happen, right? That's the inevitable outcome of having an outsider run for office in this who just doesn't have the relationships up at the Capitol or a lot of the working knowledge of how government works. You need those people who've been doing the back and forth for a little while. Does that mean that he's going to have an overwhelming amount of insider, same old ideas? Maybe. We'll see. Because when you're an outsider, you don't know those things. You might not be able to recognize when somebody is just using the same line versus when they actually have a new idea. So we'll see what happens with that. I think there were some interesting choices for this, particularly Mike Nuttall, who there was a dust-up this week. He's associated with a pretty far right-wing group that's ended up on several, they're not hate lists, but it's a part of the hate watch map, I think, from the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center.
And he stepped down from that, too.
He has stepped down from that. What I thought was more interesting than that choice, because you can think what you want to think about his affiliation with that group, but it was what came out of the transition team's spokesperson, Donnell Harder, that they were unaware of this, that he hadn't been vetted fully. And when you look up his name, a simple Google search affiliates him with that right away, that story aside. And again, they were not super worried about that, but also alluded to the fact that maybe the vetting process hadn't been as strict as you would expect, especially from somebody who wanted to clean up the mess up at the Capitol. So I think going forward, we'll be watching for those hints of insiderness, tainting Kevin Stitt's outsider image.
Another thing to watch for, too, I think, and I apologize for the voice, the laryngitis.
You really should apologize.
Oh, I apologize up and down. Another thing that I've noticed, they tend to all be very, very, very right. So you're not seeing too many who are center, and you're certainly not seeing too many who are left. So he seems to be surrounding himself with a lot of people who are going to be yes men, people who are going to agree with what he says rather than offer new and different ideas to him.
I agree, and also offer what the Republican Party has wanted here. I mean, Oklahoma is now, I think we've said it before, as close as you can really get to a one-party controlled state. I think we're as far as the state legislature go, the reddest state in the country. So I think inevitably you're going to get those more far-right advisors who are going to do what they've been wanting to do, and just Democrats who have been weak, but not as weak as they are now. They're really going to get to the Republicans will be able to do what they want to do at this level.
But we've talked about this too, though, in the past, and that Oklahoma City and Tulsa are turning more and more purple.
Yes.
So will you be alienating the large populations in both by going far right with everything?
I think you might be, and that's a calculation they're going to have to make as they work through some of the legislation that's going to come up. That I think we will see some of the more incendiary bills, which we're going to talk about a few in a minute here. That
abortion guns,
education sales taxes, to mention three. So I think we'll have to see what kind of political capital they're going to spend on their far right ideas without trying to alienate the urban areas. And they might not care. They might just say, tough luck. You're the minority and you're the extreme minority, and you can make all the noise you want. New minority leader Emily Virgin, but it doesn't make a bit of difference.
Now that said, a lot of the power they had in the House they've done away with.
Yes.
In terms of the ultra-conservative
Yes.
right-wingers, the Republicans have done away with that.
Do you think that's, and because you spend more time, not to make you talk more than you have to, because you spend more time up at the House dealing with those folks than I do, because you've got a governor administration who's going to be farther right on that spectrum than the newcomers in the House and Senate, we could see sort of a butting of heads this session. Do you think so?
I think we will, in a way that we haven't seen during the Fallon administration. Fallon did tend to be a bit more moderate as a Republican. I think we're going to see that change with Stitt. Guns is a prime example. Yes. She vetoed constitutional carry.
Yes.
Stitt has already said that he will not veto it.
And as far as and I don't like using the phrase political capital, but I'm going to use it again here because it doesn't really mean much to people. But to have the pull that Kevin Stitt will have as a new governor, Governor Mary Fallon just doesn't have that anymore. I mean, at the end, even her own party doesn't want anything to do with her. You've got open fights in the press between her and her state superintendent.
Right.
And I doubt that's going to continue to happen because Kevin Stitt has a clean slate and a lot of political capital to be able to spend here.
Also, Nick Offerman and Megan Mullally are not going to be invited to the Capitol either, or to the governor's mansion with this particular governor after what she was saying the other night. Hey, by the way, can I just do a little bit of a different tilt on the transition team? I'm not so sure that there isn't a lot of outsider influence in this. And some of the folks, I mean, there are I believe there's 7 working groups, and I'm hearing who might be on those. There's a lot of social media, so if you want to figure out who's on those transition groups, you got to kind of look at it social media. But I think that there is a vein of anti-establishment, we got to do away with bureaucracy running through this transition team. Some of the folks that I'm talking to that are, they're staying really low, their sources, but they're saying one of the things, we're really trying to re-engineer some of these aspects of state government. And if, from what I'm hearing, there is an effort to try to attack bureaucracy, that there are bureaucracy haters on some of these transition teams.
It's funny that the anti-establishment view has now become the insider view in a lot of these cases. So I think as we see those transition groups come out a little more and who's on a part of those groups, we're going to see that. But it's funny that just like running as the outsider guy might actually be the inside track now.
And once you get inside, I'll give you an example of an old buddy of ours, the DOC director in Oklahoma. For those who remember a past life, he was the chief of staff, that's Joe Albaugh, was chief of staff to Governor Bush in Texas. He goes to Washington, and one day, boom, and by the way, Joe Albaugh ran the recount in Florida, right? Which is still going on 18 years later. But so Albaugh goes to Washington, and Andy Card, all of a sudden, is now the chief of staff, not Joe Albaugh. And so don't think that handwriting wasn't on the wall for Joe at the time. So when you get into the inside, when you take over a place that insiders have been, you got to have the insiders. I mean, you got to have a translator. It's just going to happen. So I'm not so sure that all of this is because, I'm sure when you look at it's, by the way, Tulsa is really going to dominate this. Now, Tulsa has not been dominating in terms of the executive branch. So there's one change. When you look at the chief of staff, you look at the EPA fella, and I read, obviously, when you Google it, it's going to have the Pruitt aspect of it. But I'm thinking at this point, maybe we want to take a step back and go, maybe the inside philosophy is there, even though it's some people who have been working on the inside, like resistance or something.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, it's just a thought.
Right. I also wanted to say that during this whole transition process, once again, the Stitt camp has not been super transparent, and they've not been great with getting back to the press on a lot of things, specifically the television press. They've been all right with getting statements to folks like Oklahoma Watch or the Tulsa World or News OK. The Journal Record kind of hit and miss, but they've turned their focus a little bit away lately to other more important things, obviously.
Well, statements are funny because statements can't be questioned.
Right.
When you send a statement out to the newspaper, they print it as is.
Right.
When you try to do television and send a statement, our reaction is, well, we want to get somebody on camera.
Right.
And that means follow-up questions.
Right.
So read into that what you will.
Yeah, and so it's a little troubling, and from I guess from our standpoint, frustrating to want to get a reaction from the governor-elect who's going to take over the reins here in a month and a half, 6 weeks from now, and not have a lot of knowledge about where his head is at, where his team's heads are at before he takes office here. Even though he said he wants to hit the ground running, and we'd like to know what that means.
Define it.
Yeah.
Hey, could I also interject here something that to me is kind of sad, and it's like taking away a real tool, and that was non-doc ceasing operations. Now, let me just tell you, I mean, there's all kinds of media. There's public radio. There's nonprofits. Nobody worked harder than Trey Savage and those folks over at Non-Doc, and them being gone. He became a force. Non-Doc became a force with guys like you at the legislative sessions to have Non-Doc gone. And by the way, Trace is a pain in the rear on transparency, right?
Yeah.
So what we're saying to Trey Savage is, hey man, you cannot get out of journalism. This is not something that's a good development. They were doing close to 50 original pieces a month.
Yeah. And they were dusting a lot of us.
Yeah.
I mean, they'd print something
good.
and we're just like, where did he get this?
Yeah. I think he said that they went 1,000 days of printing at least one new piece of news every day, which is just incredible.
Yeah, this is a serious hit.
And as much as I admire public radio and as much as I admire the nonprofits, they were not coming close to what Non-Doc was doing. And that's the old model. And so now I think we're going to have to look and see some of the funders that look at, well, who's funding journalism? Because in this model, which didn't work for Trace and these folks, that model was producing lots of results. And I think we're going to have a discussion now about groups that are interested in journalism, what they're getting in return for what they're paying.
Right.
I mean, it's going to have to be discussed. And these guys not being in the mix for this Capitol, for the 2019 session, is a real bad thing for the public's right to know.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's a real loss. It really is. He'll land on his feet. Trace will. He's too talented and hustles too much to not. It's just, will it be in a form that was Non-Doc? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and his partner Josh McBee doing a great job over there. So it's, I mean, for us, it's sad to see something like this happen. You want to talk about some of the early bills? There's some interesting things with the early filings.
We started talking initially about constitutional carry, SB 12 by Nathan Dahm, passed in the House and the Senate last year, vetoed by the governor.
We have rights enshrined in our Constitution, one of which is our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. That right is being infringed upon in the state of Oklahoma for Oklahoma citizens. But if you are citizens of other states coming into Oklahoma, you can carry without having to go through the Oklahoma licensure process, without having to pay the fee to do so. So we're affording more rights to citizens from outside of our state than we are to our own law-abiding citizens. So I'm trying to uphold my oath to the Constitution and restore that right. I agree that people should be trained, but I don't believe that that's something that the government should force. I believe people should be informed and knowledgeable before they go and exercise their free speech rights or their voting rights or any of those rights so they don't harm others. But right now, we currently have constitutional carry in Oklahoma, just not for Oklahoma citizens.
Governor-elect Stitt says that he will not veto it, that he's in favor of it. What are your thoughts?
Well, I want to see what happens. I mean, he said he's in favor of the idea of it. I know he said he would have said yes to the bill. I don't know how informed he was about how police felt about it, how attorneys associations feel about it. I don't even know how the chambers of commerce really felt about it. If I remember,
they weren't crazy.
They weren't. Yeah, they weren't all over it. And so we'll see what happens with that. You know, you always get people who get into office and get more information than what they had on the campaign trail and may change their minds, and he might not. And constitutional carry might become the law of the land here. Let's see if it gets through the House too, where we don't have those, as we were talking about before, those further right, members of the GOP, and we'll see if the more moderate members kind of buck down on this a little bit.
Well, and also, it's not an election season like it was last time around.
Right.
Last time around, a lot of these people were voting for it because you don't want to be perceived as anti-gun going into an election in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
You don't have that hanging over your head right now.
Right.
So I think that a lot of people that were in favor of it before in the House and in the Senate may not be in favor of it this time around. I don't know if it's even going to make it to the governor's desk.
Really? You think it'll make it out of committee?
It'll make it out of committee. Yeah. Absolutely. I think Nathan Dahm has got enough muscle within the House that it's going to push through committee. I think it'll probably push through the House. I don't know if it's going to make it through the Senate.
Sure.
What about a tax? What about rolling back some tax cuts?
I think that one's interesting.
This is Senator David's.
Yeah, it's David's bill.
What she's proposing is there was a bill that passed to add a sales tax on the sale of automobiles to try to dig us out of this hole that we were in last session. Well, we're out of said hole now. So her argument is we don't need that tax anymore. Time to roll it back.
Right. To me, this is a little like when you go on a diet and you lose the weight, and then you go, good, I don't have to go to the gym or eat healthy anymore because I've lost this weight. I think it might put the state sort of in this precarious situation where, like, yeah, getting rid of taxes, no one is going to be upset about that, but does it just put us back into this potential, precipice of falling back into that hole? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see, because we did add some more taxes here, and other things were increased. So that might not factor so much, but we do know that that car sales tax was a contributing factor to pulling us out of that massive hole we were in.
You know what we should
2
do
years.
now? We should do breaking news. I wonder what the House is going to do. Is the majority leader? Look.
No, he's over there.
There's the majority. Hey, are we going to get a hearing on the tax rollback? This is breaking news, by the way.
I don't control what gets heard in committee, but if it comes out of committee, I bet it hits the floor.
There you go. All right. Hey, also another thing. One of the state transition teams is dealing with health in Oklahoma. We had a couple of big issues this week. All right. First off, a couple of big officials at the State Department of Health, which is, as we have so demonstrated over the last year, the failing Department of Health. 2 honchos were let go this week. So I find that surprising because undoubtedly Mr. Bates would like to continue.
Yeah.
Okay, who was put into a really tough situation. And then they had John Woods, who's the head of TSET, resigns, which most people thought, well, that's never going to happen. And there have been plenty of people that have hammered TSET, besides the grants and working for health care, but it's the helpline and the quitting aspect that people have gone, it's failing. It's just not working, although the ads say not true. The fact is, it has been a disappointment to many. So what is this all about? Is this positioning? Is Mr. Woods leaving because he's thinking maybe I wouldn't be there? Governor doesn't have any say-so over that, right? Board? But the governor does have say-so now because of legislation passed year about what goes on at the Department of Health.
Right.
State Department of Health.
The State Department of Health, yeah. I mean, I think some of the staff reductions, we'll call them, at the Department of Health were probably...
It's pretty PC.
Yeah. We're more of Tom Bates's deadheading the department a little bit here. I think he's been planning on pruning these things. I think medical marijuana got in the way of that. I think this would have happened a little sooner had the debacle with the State Board of Health and the rollout of medical marijuana not been a debacle. The TSET thing, I don't quite know what that is. I'm wondering if Woods is just tired of getting hammered all the time.
Wouldn't you be?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the TSET, one thing, there's more PR people than any PR firm in Oklahoma down there at TSET. And nobody's advocating they quit the ads and putting stuff out there, but the question is the efficacy of what they're doing, which people look at and go, look, states like North Carolina, which gave money to tobacco farmers, have got better smoking rates now. These ads about how we're working, it just ain't true. States who had kegger parties with their settlement money have got better smoking rates in Oklahoma.
Right.
We're doing something wrong.
Right. And it probably will take a change of leadership there to fix those problems.
Plus, we had that Fallon crony. They tried to hire $250,000. I mean, it's been one series of missteps after another.
Yeah.
And people like Mark McBride have been going after them. Will they go after them this session?
Unlikely.
Yeah,
Unlikely, honestly.
When you have a deal like what happened with the health department, agencies that don't perform, they're sort of lucky, right? I mean, if you're a really awful agency and you have the health department debacle break out, you're like, no, we're pretty lucky in that we're not the lead duck here in terms of somebody shooting us.
Right. I'm wondering that maybe TSET kind of drags on for a little while longer here, another year or so, and we hit an election year, and then you start hearing more of that come up. People hate it when you waste their money.
Like those CPAs, been hammers on Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs all the time.
All the time.
For the stuff that they do, which doesn't work. So, election year deal, right?
I think it's an election year deal. I think you bring that up, you stir the pot a little bit, and then the board over at TSET starts to take notice a little more. They might change some things up. That won't be the same thing at the Department of Health once SIT gets in, but TSET's a different animal.
What comes this coming week? More Ricola sales, well, obviously, or Hall's mentholatum, whatever.
He's keeping them in business.
Invest in Ricola.
Yeah.
What's happening transition team and legislative proceedings? What's going on for the next coming week?
Legislators are still proposing their bills. We're keeping an eye on those as they come in. There's been a couple of them that have been interesting. Obviously, that constitutional carry. Silk has put forth another bill which would make abortions a felony. I don't see that going anywhere.
I don't either. That's a constituency bill. That's a look what I did for you because of how we in our district feel about abortion. And he knows that that bill would certainly mean a court fight.
Yep.
And maybe he's courting that. I don't know. Maybe he's looking for the fight.
I think he wants it.
and the court battle. But we'll see. I don't think that's going to go very far.
It hasn't in the past.
No, but that is something you can turn around and say, look what I've done for you in your district.
I think the big one to watch, though, right now is constitutional.
I do too. And I think if that makes it through, and you can kind of glean from folks that they're going to really support this, it might set the tone going forward into session.
Well, thanks, guys. Glad to have you back after Thanksgiving holiday. Now we've got like 2-3 weeks, and then we'll go quiet again because Christmas, New Year's coming. Hope you get feeling better.
Oh, I feel fine. Just sound like crap.
Sounds like the White House. We'll see you again next week.